I refuse to pay $50,000 for your cruise, Jessica. The words slipped out quietly, but they landed like a grenade in my son Michael's pristine living room. Jessica's face twisted, her manicured fingers crumpling the glossy cruise brochure. Her hazel eyes, usually so calculated, blazed with fury. "Excuse me," her voice was sharp, a weapon honed over the 5 years since she married Michael. I'd grown used to that tone, the one that made me feel like an intruder in my own family. I straightened in the armchair, summoning courage I wasn't sure I had. "You heard me. I won't pay for your anniversary cruise." Silence descended, heavy and tense. Michael sat rigid on the couch, his dark eyes flicking between us like he was watching a storm brew. I knew whose side he'd take. He always chose Jessica. "Susan," Jessica said, rising slowly, her 510 frame towering over me. "I think you misunderstood. This isn't a request." My heart thudded, but I held my ground. I understood perfectly, and the answer is no. That's when it happened. Her hand flashed out, the slap striking my cheek with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The sting radiated across my face, down my neck, hot and sharp. I touched my cheek, feeling the warmth bloom under my skin. "Then find somewhere else to live," Jessica screamed, her polished facade shattering. "I'm done supporting a selfish old woman who can't even help her own family." I turned to Michael, waiting for him to intervene, to say she'd crossed a line. Instead, he nodded, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Mom," he murmured, barely audible, "maybe it's time you found your own place. Jessica's right. We've been carrying you financially for too long." The betrayal cut deeper than the slap. Michael was my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out when he was 3. I'd worked double shifts at the diner, sacrificed dreams, skipped meals to ensure he had school supplies, clothes, a chance at a future. And this was how he repaid me. "I've been paying rent here for 2 years," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. $800 a month, plus groceries, utilities, and that $10,000 for your car's down payment." Jessica laughed, a cold, slicing sound. $800? Michael makes 6 figures, Susan, your little handouts are nothing." "Then why do you need my $50,000 for a cruise?" I asked, the question hanging in the air. Michael finally met my eyes, and what I saw chilled me, resentment, cold and unfamiliar. "Because we deserve it, Mom. Jessica and I work hard. We've earned a luxury vacation." "With my money," my voice cracked, the weight of his words crushing. "Money you're just hoarding anyway," Jessica snapped. "What's a 62-year-old widow need it for? No life, no friends, nothing. At least let your family enjoy it." Her words stung because they held a sliver of truth. I'd grown isolated since moving in with them. Jessica had subtly eroded my connections, always finding reasons I couldn't visit old co-workers from the diner or invite them over. "Too much clutter," she'd say, or "we're too busy for guests." Over time, my world had shrunk to their house, their rules. "I'm saving it for emergencies," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Well, this is an emergency," Michael said, standing and crossing his arms. "Our marriage needs this trip, Mom. If you can't support that, maybe you don't understand what family means." I stared at my son, a stranger in a tailored shirt. When had he become so cold? When had he started seeing me as a burden instead of the mother who'd given him everything? "I see," I whispered, grabbing my worn purse and standing on unsteady legs. "I'll pack my things." "Good," Jessica said, sinking onto the couch with a satisfied smirk. "And don't think you can guilt-trip us. Michael agrees with me completely." As I climbed the stairs to my small room, Michael's voice stopped me. "Mom, wait." A flicker of hope sparked, but it died fast. "I'm going to need every penny from you. That $50,000 plus whatever else you've saved. Consider it payment for everything we've done for you." The words hollowed me out. I didn't respond, just continued to the attic room I'd called home for 2 years. Packing was quick. When you're treated like a guest in your own family, you don't accumulate much. 2 suitcases and a box of photo albums. My life reduced to what could fit in my 15-year-old Chevy. Downstairs, I overheard Jessica on the phone in the kitchen, her voice bright and triumphant. "Yes, Mom, she's finally leaving. Said she'd chip in for the cruise as a goodbye gift. We're getting our house back." She was rewriting the story, casting me as the villain who'd graciously bowed out. Michael was nowhere to be seen, likely hiding in his office, too spineless to face his actions. I paused at the front door, taking in the house I'd helped them buy. The $20,000 I'd given them as a wedding gift, scraped together from 30 years of serving coffee and scrubbing floors, had gone toward this place with its granite counters and gleaming hardwood. I stepped into the cool evening air, loading my bags into my car, the one thing I owned outright. As I sat in the driver's seat, reality crashed over me. At 62, I was homeless with no family to turn to, no close friends left. Jessica's manipulations had severed my ties, one excuse at a time. Tears burned as I gripped the wheel, the weight of my son's betrayal sinking in. The child I'd sacrificed everything for had discarded me like trash. I drove aimlessly through the suburbs, past houses glowing with warmth, past diners where I'd once poured coffee and smiled through exhaustion. As night fell, I parked in a 24-hour diner lot, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My cheek still bore the faint red mark of Jessica's slap, my eyes swollen from crying. I looked like what I was, a discarded woman with nowhere to go. But beneath the pain, something stirred. A spark of anger, or maybe defiance, whispering that I deserved better. I checked my bank balance, $87,000. More than Jessica suspected, saved penny by penny from years of toil. I'd thought I was saving for Michael's future, but now I saw the truth. I'd built a prison of guilt and obligation, chained to people who saw me as a means to an end. The question was, what now? For 3 days I lived in my car, drifting between parking lots, stretching my cash with cheap diner meals and coffee. The nights were the worst, curled up in the backseat, jumping at every shadow, the cold seeping through the windows. I'd wake stiff and sore, the weight of my situation heavier each morning. But on the 4th day, something drew me to the marina. Maybe it was the cry of gulls or the way the morning light danced on the water, reminding me of my youth, when life felt full of possibility. I parked near the docks and walked along the wooden planks, the salt air sharp and cleansing. Massive cruise ships towered over smaller boats, their white hulls gleaming. I'd never been on a cruise, couldn't afford it, but I'd always imagined sailing away, leaving troubles behind. That's when I saw him. He stood on the deck of a grand ship, his captain's uniform crisp, grey hair catching the breeze. Even after 40 years, I'd know that profile anywhere. Robert Callahan, my first love, the man I'd thought I'd marry before life pulled us apart. My heart stuttered, then raced. We hadn't spoken since 1983, when we were 22, young and foolish, believing time was endless. I froze, torn between fleeing and staying. I looked rough, 3 days in my car, hair in a messy bun, wearing the same jeans and sweater I'd left in. But before I could decide, Robert looked up and our eyes met across the water. His face broke into that familiar smile, the one that had made my heart race at the coastal diner where we'd worked one summer. He waved, then moved quickly toward the gangway. Susan Harper, hearing my maiden name after so long brought tears to my eyes. It's Susan Bennett now, I called back, though I wondered if that name still fit. Was I a Bennett if my son had disowned me? Robert jogged down the gangway, the years having treated him kindly. Still tall and lean, his hair now silver, his face etched with lines from squinting into ocean sunsets. My God, Susan, he said, stopping a few feet away. After all these years. Hello, Robert, I said, suddenly shy, like I was 22 again, stealing glances at him between diner shifts. You look, he paused, his eyes scanning me with concern, not judgment. You look like you could use a hot meal and a strong coffee. I laughed, the sound shaky, that obvious. I've spent 40 years at sea, he said. I can read a person's face like a storm on the horizon. Come aboard, let's catch up properly. I don't want to impose, I said. You're probably busy and I'm not exactly dressed for a cruise ship. Susan, he said gently, I'm the captain. I can invite whoever I want aboard, and right now I want to invite an old friend who looks like she needs one. His kindness nearly broke me. It had been years since anyone spoke to me with such warmth, expecting nothing in return. I followed him up the gangway, awed by the ship's opulence, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, elegant dining rooms, a theatre, even a small shopping arcade. This is incredible, I breathed. Wait till you see my quarters, Robert grinned. Captain's perk, best view on the ship. His cabin was stunning, larger than most apartments, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbour. A plush sitting area, a polished dining table, and a glimpse of a bedroom beyond made it feel like a luxury suite. Coffee? He asked, heading to a sleek kitchenette. Please, I sank into a cushioned chair, trying to process this surreal shift. 4 days ago I'd been trapped in Michael's house, unappreciated, invisible. Now I was in a captain's quarters, reconnecting with man from my past. Robert handed me a steaming mug and sat across from me. So, he said, his blue eyes studying me, what brought you to my harbour looking like you've been through a hurricane? It's a long story, I said, sipping the rich coffee. I've got time, we don't sail till tomorrow night. So I told him everything, my husband leaving when Michael was 3, The endless diner shifts to keep us afloat, Michael's marriage to Jessica, moving in with them and losing myself in their world. I told him about the crew's demand, the slap, Michael's betrayal, the 3 nights in my car. Robert listened, his expression darkening as I spoke, his jaw tightening when I described the slap. When I finished, he set down his cup and leaned forward. Let me get this straight. Your son and his wife demanded $50,000, and when you refused, they threw you out. It sounds worse when you say it, I said, my voice small. It sounds exactly as bad as it is, Susan. That's elder abuse. The term hit like a punch. It's not, I mean They exploited you financially and made you homeless when you stopped complying. That's abuse. He stood, packing the cabin. How much have you given them over the years? I thought it through. $20,000 for their wedding, $15,000 for their house down payment, plus rent, utilities, groceries, maybe $60,000 over 2 years. Nearly $100,000, Robert said quietly. Jesus, Susan. I wanted to help, Michael's my son. And you're his mother, that's a two-way street. He stopped packing and looked at me. What now? I don't know. Find a cheap apartment, maybe a job, though at my age, I trailed off, shrugging. Robert stared out at the harbour, then turned back with an expression I couldn't quite read. What if there's another option? What do you mean? He sat down, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. I'm not just the captain, I'm part owner of Callahan Cruises. We started small, a few ships in the Gulf. Now we have 12 routes worldwide. We need experienced people for our management team. Robert, I appreciate it, but I know nothing about cruises or business. You know customer service. You've handled difficult people, managed tight budgets, solved problems on the fly. You've done it your whole life. And you know sacrifice, putting others first. That's what we need in senior management. I stared at him. Are you offering me a job? A partnership, he said, his eyes steady. We're expanding. We need someone to oversee guest services across the fleet. Someone who understands making people feel valued. Someone who knows what it's like when the people who should care don't. The offer was so generous, so unexpected, I couldn't process it. Robert, I don't know business. You'll learn, you'll have the best teacher me. He smiled, warm and encouraging. Why, I asked, my voice trembling, why do this for me? He was quiet, his eyes distant. Remember the last time we saw each other, that night before you left for college? I nodded. I'd won a scholarship to study accounting. He'd landed his first job on a freighter. We'd known life was pulling us apart but were too young to fight it. I should have asked you to stay, he said softly. I should have found a way, it's one of my biggest regrets. I'm not saying this to push anything romantic. I'm saying I never stopped caring, Susan. If I can give you a chance to rebuild after what they did, maybe I can make up for some lost time. My hands shook as I set down my cup. Outside, the harbour bustled, people chasing dreams, building futures. For so long I'd just existed, serving others' dreams while mine faded. I don't know business partnerships, I said slowly. Good thing you'll have an excellent teacher. Robert's grin was infectious. What do you say, Susan, ready to sail away and start a new adventure? I thought of my car, my suitcases, Michael and Jessica probably booking their cruise with money they'd tried to extort. Maybe it was time to stop being the victim. Yes, I said, my voice firm. I think I am. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind. Robert was true to his word, guiding me through the intricacies of Callahan Cruises at their sleek office overlooking the marina. I threw myself into learning guest service protocols, safety regulations, staff management, vendor contracts, food and beverage operations. It was overwhelming, but my years at the diner proved invaluable. Handling entitled customers translated to managing guest complaints. Stretching every dollar became fleet-wide cost optimization. You're a natural, Robert said one afternoon as we reviewed guest satisfaction surveys in his office, papers strewn across a polished conference table that probably cost more than my annual diner wages. Just common sense, I replied, though his praise warmed me. People want to feel valued. They want their problems solved quickly, their experiences enhanced. It's not rocket science. You'd be surprised how many in this industry forget that, Robert said, leaning back in his chair. They chase profit margins and efficiency, losing sight of the human element. That's why you're perfect for this. I smiled, a flicker of pride sparking. For the first time in years I felt capable, seen. The work was demanding, but it gave me purpose. I started each day with a sense of possibility. a stark contrast to the suffocation of Michael's house. One evening, as we wrapped up a meeting on staff training protocols, Robert invited me to dinner aboard the ship. Not business, he clarified, sensing my hesitation. Just two old friends catching up. We dined in a private lounge, the harbour lights twinkling through the windows. Over grilled salmon and a glass of wine, we reminisced about our summer at the diner, sneaking fries, dancing to the jukebox after closing, dreaming of futures we couldn't yet grasp. You always had this spark, Robert said, his eyes soft. Even when you were exhausted, you'd make every customer feel like they mattered. I see it again now. I blushed, unused to compliments. I'd forgotten what that felt like, I admitted. For so long I was just surviving. You're not just surviving anymore, he said. You're building something and you're damn good at it. That night, as I drove to the small motel room I'd rented with my savings, I realized I was starting to believe him. The motel wasn't much, but it was mine, a step toward independence. I'd begun looking at apartments, calculating budgets with the confidence of someone who'd managed diner tips for decades. A month later, I was overseeing my first project, a new guest loyalty program for Callahan Cruises. I worked with the marketing team, drawing on my diner days to craft incentives that felt personal, like free upgrades for repeat guests or handwritten thank you notes. The program launched to glowing feedback, with passengers praising the human touch. Robert beamed at me across the office, and I felt a surge of accomplishment I hadn't known in years. But the past wasn't done with me. One morning, as I reviewed vendor contracts, my phone buzzed. Michael, my heart clenched, but I answered. Mom, he said, his voice tight, we need to talk. About what? I asked, bracing myself. The cruise, we booked it, but there's an issue with the payment. We need your help. I almost laughed. You threw me out, Michael. You don't get to ask for my money now. Jessica's sorry about what happened, he said, but the words felt hollow. We just need a loan. You owe us for all we did. Owe you? My voice rose. I gave you $100,000 over the years. I gave you my home, my time, my life. You don't get to demand more. There was a pause, then Jessica's voice cut in. You're so selfish, Susan. After everything, you can't even help your son. I hung up, my hands shaking. Robert, who'd overheard, walked over. You okay? They think I owe them, I said, tears threatening. After everything. You owe them nothing, he said firmly. You've given enough, it's time to live for you. His words sank in, solidifying my resolve. I threw myself into my work, finding joy in small victories, resolving a passenger's complaint, training a new staff member, seeing glowing reviews. Each day I felt stronger, more like the woman I'd been before life wore me down. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of the Ocean Crest, Callahan Cruises' flagship, as it prepared to sail. I'd been promoted to Director of Guest Services, overseeing the entire fleet. My apartment, modest but cozy, overlooked the marina, a daily reminder of my new beginning. Robert and I had grown close, not romantic, but a deep friendship rooted in shared history and mutual respect. As the ship's horn sounded, I looked out at the horizon, the water stretching endless and free. I thought of Michael and Jessica, probably on their cruise, spending money they'd scraped together without me. I felt no anger, only relief. I'd stopped being their victim and started writing my own story.